Oliver never expected that the sound of a door slamming could feel like a verdict. But when Alyssa stormed out of the courthouse, heels snapping sharply against the marble as if stomping on the grave of their marriage, he understood. She believed she had won. She thought she had crushed him. She thought the divorce she had filed for, and the assets she believed she would be granted, would finally prove her superiority. She didn't even glance back at him when the judge announced her petition had been accepted. She didn't hide her cold smirk when she signed her name with a flourish, as if she were autographing the finale she'd been craving for years. She didn't expect the moment that followed. She couldn't have. Because when the judge cleared his throat and read aloud Oliver's formally disclosed net worth, the air shifted. Alyssa's smile froze mid-expression. The number echoed through the courtroom like a slap. Alyssa blinked once, then twice. Her pen slipped from her fingers. Oliver didn't react. Not outwardly. Inwardly, though, he felt the quiet satisfaction of a plan unfolding exactly as intended. A calm he had cultivated over 2 years of preparation. A calm that terrified her, because panic began to spread across her face like spilled ink. She expected a broken man. She got a strategist. For a long moment, Alyssa stared at him, searching for the fear that should have been in his eyes. But Oliver only offered a polite, unreadable smile. A smile that told her nothing, except the truth she would uncover too late. He wasn't walking away empty-handed. She was. And yet, as the judge dismissed them, Oliver kept his composure. His real victory wasn't that number. His real victory was that she still had no clue how he had protected everything that mattered long before she ever asked for a divorce. Alyssa walked out first, confident the world still bent around her. She pushed the glass door so hard it slammed against the stopper. A loud, arrogant punctuation mark. Her friends, those who had always whispered to her that she could do better than him, waited outside. They greeted her with excited gasps and sympathetic touches, as though she had just survived some heroic battle. Oliver walked out minutes later, adjusting his cuffs, calm as still water. Because for him, this wasn't the ending. This was the final move in a game she didn't know she was playing. But before the collapse, before the courtroom moment that shattered her certainty, before the lies and the secrets and the cruel quiet that settled into their home, there was another life. One that began 6 years earlier, on a warm summer evening, at a birthday party he almost didn't attend. He still remembered the way the lights hung overhead on thin copper wires, soft and golden. The smell of grilled food drifting from the patio. The sound of laughter rolling across his friend Elise's backyard. He had arrived late, quiet and reserved as always, feeling awkward stepping into circles already formed. And then he saw her. Alyssa. She wasn't the most beautiful woman in the world, but she carried herself like she knew she could be. Confident posture, chin raised, eyes that scanned the room as if measuring the worth of everything they landed on. A glass of rosé dangled between her fingers, not held, but displayed. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look unsure. She looked like the center of gravity. She was talking to 2 men who clearly admired her, laughing too loudly at her jokes, angling their bodies toward her. Oliver watched her for only a moment before she turned, directly toward him. Their eyes locked, and something electric pulled him in before he understood what was happening. She excused herself from the group like a queen dismissing her subjects, and approached him with a smile he would later replay in his head for years. "You're Oliver, right? Elise told me you'd be here. I wanted to meet you." Wanted. As if he were the one everyone else had been waiting for. He didn't know it then, but Alyssa had a powerful gift. She knew exactly how to make someone feel seen. They talked all night. Not because he was charming. Oliver was intelligent, soft-spoken, and a bit socially hesitant, but because she led every conversation with the ease of someone used to being adored. She laughed at his subtle humor, complimented his ambitions, leaned in with interest when he talked about the small startup he was struggling to grow. She made him feel like a success long before he actually was one. By the end of the night, Alyssa had given him her number, kissed him on the cheek, and said, "Don't make me wait too long. I hate waiting." He texted her the next morning. Their relationship accelerated fast, faster than anything he'd experienced. She insisted on spontaneous dates, on late-night drives, on showing up at his office with takeout containers, and telling him she admired his ambition. She would sit on his desk while he typed, swinging her legs like she belonged there. Those were the early days, the ones Oliver would later look back on with a mixture of nostalgia and disbelief. Because in those days, she made him feel special, chosen. She told him he deserved more in life, that he needed someone who believed in him. He believed she was that someone. Within 6 months, they moved in together. It was Alyssa's idea. She framed it as romantic and practical, but in truth it gave her control of the environment. She picked the apartment. She picked the decor. She picked the rules. Little by little, Oliver found himself adjusting to her preferences, believing compromising was the price of love. At first, her hints were subtle, comments about his modest car, about the inexpensive restaurants he chose, about how, in her friend group, men often surprised their girlfriends with designer bags, just because. "Don't you want to spoil me someday?" she'd ask with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. He did. Or at least he wanted her to feel appreciated. But over time, the questions turned into comparisons. Comparisons into expectations. Expectations into pressure. He didn't know when admiration turned into condescension, but Alyssa's tone changed slowly, like water boiling gradually until you don't realize you're burning. Whenever her wealthy friends invited them to gatherings, Oliver felt like an outsider. He could see the subtle looks Alyssa exchanged with her friends when he hesitated over a wine list or made a comment that didn't fit their world. She never defended him, never softened the blow. Instead, she told him afterward that he needed to learn from them. Her world demanded sharpening. He was expected to be the blade. And so he worked harder. Longer hours, more sacrifices, more ambition fueled not only by dreams, but by the quiet fear of losing her approval. He didn't know it then, but he was already losing himself. Because as he poured himself into building something greater, Alyssa began drifting the opposite direction, toward freedom, toward distance, toward a life that didn't require compromise or loyalty. It started with girl trips, then solo weekends. Then, "I just need more space, Oliver. Please don't make everything about you." Every time she left, she'd return colder, more distracted, scrolling through her phone with a secret smile she never explained. A new perfume? New outfits? New rules? Oliver pretended not to notice, pretended it was temporary, pretended love could survive indifference. He worked late nights not just for his future, but to avoid the tension waiting for him at home. Alyssa barely talked anymore. When she did, it was only to criticize. He felt guilty for even existing in the same room. He questioned himself constantly. Was he enough? Was he the problem? Was she right to be disappointed in him? She made sure he believed so. Then came the night he returned home and heard laughter, hers, floating from the kitchen. Not warm, affectionate laughter. Mocking laughter. Laughter shared with a group of her friends, their voices spilling through the hallway like a private joke held at his expense. Alyssa wore a black silk robe, something he'd never seen before, holding a glass of champagne as her friends lounged around the counter. "Look who finally came home," she said, raising her glass. "Our hard-working hero." Her friends giggled. Alyssa smirked. Shame he doesn't have anything to show for it. Something inside him cracked softly, like a hairline fracture he knew would someday break completely. He walked past her, silent. She didn't realize that silence meant everything had changed. Because that night, in the dark of their garage, sitting alone on a cold stool between toolboxes and moving boxes, Oliver understood a truth that would shape every move he made afterward. Alyssa hadn't left him. She had simply stopped loving him long ago. And now he was done pretending. Done absorbing her cruelty. Done shrinking himself to fit her world. Done believing he was lucky to have her. He wasn't broken. He was awakening. And Alyssa would never see it coming. The morning after Alyssa mocked him in front of her friends, Oliver woke with a strange stillness in his chest. Not numbness. Numbness was familiar by now. This was something else. A quiet recognition that the person he had been for the past few years had finally died. And in his place stood someone who no longer needed Alyssa's approval to breathe. The house was silent. The type of silence that carries the weight of 1,000 unsaid things. Alyssa wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. She had left early, claiming she needed air. Lately she needed a lot of air, more than one woman should reasonably require. He poured himself coffee, sat at the kitchen table she once insisted on buying because it was minimalistic and chic, and stared out the window at the faint outline of dawn. The world outside looked softer than usual. Maybe freedom always looked like this, he thought. He didn't text her. He didn't call. He didn't ask where she was. A week earlier, silence from him would have triggered her. She'd accuse him of being passive-aggressive, needy, insensitive. But now he simply didn't care. The shift was subtle, but seismic. He learned something crucial overnight. You don't need someone's love to survive, just your own permission to let go. Alyssa returned later that morning around 10, hair freshly styled, wearing a new beige trench coat he hadn't seen before. The faint scent of an expensive perfume he also didn't recognize lingered in the air when she walked past him. "You're home," she said, surprised, as if the sight of him in his own kitchen required explanation. "I live here," he replied calmly. She narrowed her eyes, sensing something in his tone she couldn't label. Well, clearly. She waited for him to ask where she had been. When he didn't, her lips tightened. "I stayed with Megan," she offered. He nodded once. "Okay. Just okay." No interrogation, no guilt, no reaction. The lack of reaction bothered her more than any argument would have. Alyssa wasn't used to being ignored. She thrived on emotional sparring, on controlling the narrative, on making him run after clarity. With no chase, she had no game. She walked away with a small frown. Oliver didn't chase. He didn't even watch her leave. Instead, He returned to his home office and opened his laptop to continue working on the project that had quietly become his sanctuary. The mobile app he had been building for nearly 2 years. An idea born from late nights and silent suffering, designed to help small businesses automate their marketing tasks. Something he'd pitched to investors discreetly, using shell companies and strategic partnerships, designed to keep Alyssa from ever reaching his true income. He had learned long ago that the only protection against someone like Alyssa was a fortress of secrets. And he had been building his silently, brick by brick. She had no idea how much he had grown, how far he had come. She still pictured him as the insecure man who had worshipped her every step. She didn't realize that the version of Oliver she knew was gone. It took him months to accept it. But the fracture between them wasn't new. It had begun long before the night she mocked him with champagne in hand. It started the day she came home from her first girls' trip, wearing a dress he had never seen her wear before. Shorter, tighter, bolder, with a glow that didn't belong to him, with laughter that felt too vibrant, too distant. He remembered noticing how she wouldn't put her phone down that night, the way she angled it away from him, the way her eyes softened when a certain notification lit up her screen. He didn't ask then either. Back then, his silence was fear. Now it was clarity. Over the next few months, Alyssa increasingly retreated into herself, her schedule, her friends, her mysterious work events that always ended past midnight. She insisted she needed space, but the truth was simpler. She needed stimulation, admiration, excitement. Things she believed Oliver couldn't give her. She stopped asking him about his work. She stopped sharing anything about her own. She stopped looking at him like a partner. Eventually, he became a ghost in their home, a quiet presence, drifting from room to room, tolerated but unseen. He tried. God, he tried. He apologized for things he didn't do. He adjusted his behavior. He lowered his voice. He softened his edges. He took the blame she handed him, even when it made him smaller. He tried to earn affection that should have never required earning. But the more he tried, the more she pulled away. The more she pulled away, the more he blamed himself. And the more he blamed himself, the easier it became for her to rewrite their narrative. The problem was always Oliver. She convinced him that his insecurities pushed her away. She convinced him that his ambition threatened her peace. She convinced him that if he were easier to love, she wouldn't need so much space. But the truth was simpler. She had been rehearsing life without him long before he noticed the script. The isolation crept up on him slowly, inch by inch, until his world consisted of work, silence, and an occasional forced smile at dinner. He felt smaller every day, like Alyssa had replaced the mirrors in their home with warped reflections of him, ones that only showed his flaws. He lost friends. He stopped going to family gatherings. He avoided social events because Alyssa always found a way to embarrass him, subtly or openly. He didn't realize then how deeply manipulated he was, how long she had been tightening the leash while convincing him it was jewelry. But the human spirit has limits. Even someone as patient and loyal as Oliver eventually reaches the point where survival becomes instinct. The night she humiliated him in the kitchen had been the breaking point. But the erosion had begun much earlier. Days after the kitchen incident, Alyssa became restless. His silence irritated her. He wasn't providing the emotional reactions she fed on. She needed his attention. Whether positive or negative mattered little. What mattered was control. One evening she came home wearing a dress more revealing than anything she'd ever worn around him. She smelled like a perfume meant for nights when people made questionable decisions. She leaned against the doorway, clearly expecting him to react. "You're not going to say anything?" she asked, her tone a blend of accusation and invitation. "You look fine," he said, plainly. "Fine," she repeated, offended. He didn't elaborate. Alyssa scoffed and stormed off, muttering, "Unbelievable." Oliver didn't follow. Instead, he wrote in his journal, the one he had started when something inside him first whispered that Alyssa's behavior wasn't normal. The journal where he documented her changes, her inconsistencies, her absences, her words. It wasn't meant to be evidence at first. It was self-preservation, a way to regain clarity when she twisted his reality. But over time, it became something more, a record of the truth she insisted didn't exist. He noted her late nights, her altered routines, the new phone password she refused to share. He noted her sudden bursts of excitement when she thought he wasn't watching. He noted the way she smiled at her phone, smiled in ways she hadn't smiled at him in years. It hurt. But it also illuminated something he had refused to see. She was practicing life without him. And soon he realized he needed to practice life without her. His app gained traction. Investors who had once dismissed him now wanted in. He negotiated silently, through third-party companies, through contracts she'd never find. He protected every dollar because he knew, long before she did, that the day would come when she'd try to take everything from him. Alyssa wasn't evil. She was entitled, and entitled people don't leave marriages empty-handed. The more she drifted, the more focused he became. The colder she grew, the sharper he became. The more she dismissed him, the less he needed her validation. And then came the moment that confirmed everything he had feared. He came home early from a meeting, earlier than usual, and heard voices inside. Female voices, laughing. Alyssa's voice, louder than the rest. He walked down the hallway quietly, stopping just before the kitchen. He saw them through the open doorway. Alyssa stood in the center, wearing that black silk robe again, a glass of champagne lifted as if in a toast. Her friends circled her like devoted followers. "So, what's the plan with Oliver?" one of them asked. Alyssa smirked. "Plan? There doesn't need to be a plan. There's nothing to plan around." Her friends giggled. "No, seriously," another pressed. "Are you actually leaving him?" "Eventually," Alyssa said, "but not yet. There's no point leaving someone who has nothing." They laughed again. Oliver froze. The moment wasn't loud. It was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet when something inside you dies and something else is born. Alyssa's next words sealed everything. "Let him keep thinking I'm the best thing that ever happened to him. When I leave, he'll blame himself. Men like him always do." Her friends raised their glasses. For the first time in years, Oliver felt nothing. No heartbreak, no anger, no desperation, only clarity. He walked past them without a word. Alyssa didn't even notice at first. Then she paused, turned, and her face changed slightly. "Oliver," she said, "we're having a private conversation." "I know," he answered. "Continue." She blinked, thrown off by his tone. When he left the room, he didn't slam the door. He didn't look back. He simply walked to the garage, sat down, and breathed, really breathed, for the first time in years. He knew now that Alyssa had mentally checked out long before that night. She had rehearsed his absence so thoroughly that she forgot he could still surprise her. That was the night Oliver stopped loving her. But it was also the night he began preparing for the months that followed. Months of silence, strategy, and steady withdrawal. Months in which he built the foundation for the quiet war she never saw coming. The cracks had become canyons, and soon those canyons would swallow her pride whole. Because the next phase of Oliver's transformation wasn't emotional, it was strategic. And Alyssa was far too arrogant to see the shift. The weeks that followed became a quiet battleground. One where no plates flew, no doors slammed, no voices rose, yet every day the distance between Oliver and Alyssa stretched wider, sharper, colder. It was the kind of cold that didn't freeze skin but carved into bone. Alyssa felt it first, the shift, the withdrawal, the absence of the man she had once controlled like a marionette. At first, she told herself he was sulking. Then she decided he was being dramatic. Then she convinced herself it was temporary. But the truth was simple. Oliver was no longer orbiting her gravity. He had become a planet with his own sun. The small changes. It started subtly. Oliver no longer asked where she was going. He no longer waited up for her. He no longer offered to cook dinner when she forgot. He no longer filled the silence with nervous explanations. When she spoke, he listened without reacting, like someone observing a stranger through glass. When she rolled her eyes at him, he didn't flinch. When she criticized him, he didn't defend himself. When she flaunted her late nights or her new clothes, he didn't notice, or pretended not to. His emotional detachment was surgical, and it terrified her. One evening, she tried to reassert control. She stormed into his office, hands on her hips, chin lifted in that performance posture she used whenever she wanted to feel superior. "We need to talk," she announced. He didn't look up from his laptop. "About? You've been acting weird." He typed another line of code. "Define weird." "You know exactly what I mean." He finally met her gaze. His eyes held no warmth, no anger, no apology, just neutrality. "What do you want to talk about, Alyssa?" His use of her full name made her uncomfortable. He used to call her Liz, warmly, softly, with meaning. "Why are you being so distant?" she asked. "I'm not distant," he said. "I'm busy." "Busy," she scoffed. "You're always busy now." "That's how work is," she frowned. "Are you mad at me?" "No." "Then why—" "Alyssa," he interrupted gently. "Not everything I do is about you." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't say it with malice. But to her, it was a slap. The first crack in her confidence. Later that night, she tried to search his laptop. Password changed. She tried his phone. Password changed. She tried his iPad. Password changed. Oliver used to leave everything unlocked. She considered his openness a sign of trust, though she treated it as a convenience. Now every device was sealed. She sat in the dark living room, wine glass clutched so tightly it squeaked. He was hiding something. Or worse, he didn't care enough to share. She didn't know which terrified her more. The incident. A week later, Oliver returned home early again. He walked into the kitchen and found Alyssa sitting on the floor, rummaging through a box of old receipts, bills, and documents. She didn't hear him come in. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through papers, insurance forms, old tax returns, miscellaneous files. She was searching for something incriminating, something exploitable. He leaned against the doorway. "Lose something?" She jolted, then quickly masked her panic. "No, just organizing." He raised an eyebrow. "On the floor?" "Don't be sarcastic," she snapped. He studied her quietly. She was unraveling. She knew it. He knew it. But neither said the words. After a moment, he walked past her and took a bottle of water from the fridge. She didn't move from the floor, didn't breathe as he stepped behind her. He paused. "You won't find what you're looking for." Her shoulders stiffened. She didn't look at him. She didn't ask what he meant. She didn't have to. She knew. And he knew she knew. For years, Alyssa had been the shadow in their marriage. The one who watched, monitored, controlled. Now she was panicking because she could no longer see into him. She had lost her favorite toy. The dinner party. 2 weeks later came the event that split their marriage open like a fault line. Alyssa's company hosted a dinner party. She insisted Oliver come, likely to show the world she still had a husband who adored her. He agreed, but not for her. When they arrived, Alyssa slipped into performance mode, laughing a little too loudly, holding Oliver's arm as if she were proud of him, when in reality she hadn't been proud of anything he did in years. Oliver didn't play his usual role. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't flustered. He didn't cling to Alyssa for social cues. He stood tall, calm, detached. His confidence made people look at him, something Alyssa didn't expect and certainly didn't like. Her co-workers noticed too. At one point during dinner, a man named Victor, a smug, arrogant type who clearly thought he had a chance with Alyssa, leaned toward Oliver and smirked. "So, Oliver, must be tough." Oliver sipped his drink. "What must be tough?" Victor chuckled. "Being married to someone way out of your league." The table erupted in harsh laughter. A few people looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. Alyssa didn't defend him. She didn't correct Victor. She didn't even look at Oliver. She smirked. Victor leaned back. "How does it feel?" Oliver's lips curved. A smirk. Small. Controlled. Dangerous. He lifted his glass, meeting Victor's eyes with a stare so calm it was unsettling. "It feels," he said quietly, "like you're laughing at a man you don't know, about a situation you definitely don't understand." The table fell silent. Victor blinked. Alyssa stiffened. Everyone sensed something had shifted. Something deep. Something irreversible. Oliver leaned back, relaxed, composed. "Enjoy the joke while you can," he added. "Trust me, the punchline hasn't landed yet." And it hadn't. But it would. Very soon. The breakdown. That night, after they got home, Alyssa exploded. "How dare you embarrass me like that?" she shouted. He removed his jacket, hung it neatly, and looked at her with eerie calm. "I didn't embarrass you." "Yes, you did. You made a scene." "No," he said softly. "I made a statement." Her face turned red. People were staring. They were staring at Victor, not me. "Oh, don't act like you were being noble," she spat. "You've been different. Cold, distant, secretive." Oliver didn't respond. "You're hiding things," she hissed. "Maybe," he said. She stepped closer. "Are you cheating on me?" He smiled, not kindly. "No, but it's interesting that your mind went there first." She froze. He leaned in slightly. "Projection is an ugly thing, Alyssa." Her knees nearly buckled. He walked past her and went to bed. She stayed standing for a long time, staring at the wall as if it could explain how the man she once controlled so easily had become a stranger she couldn't read. The mistake that exposed everything. The next morning, Alyssa tried something new. Pleasantries. She made breakfast. She brewed his coffee. She wore a soft sweater instead of a tight dress. She sat across from him with a gentle smile. "So," she said casually, "how's work?" He didn't look up. "Fine. What are you working on exactly these days?" "Projects." "What kind of projects?" "Important ones." She pressed her lips together, her patience thinning. "I'm trying here, Oliver." "No," he said. "You're trying to gather information." Her facade cracked. "Why are you acting like this?" He finally looked at her. "With purpose." Alyssa stared at him, realization dawning slowly, like a sunrise she didn't want. "Are you planning something?" she whispered. "Yes." "What?" "You'll know soon enough." Her hands trembled around the coffee mug. That terrified her more than anything else. The evidence. She never wanted to see. 3 days later, Alyssa made a mistake. She left her phone unattended, and a message preview popped up on the screen. A man's name. A message that began with, "Last night was incredible. When can I see you again?" Oliver wasn't snooping. The phone lit up as he walked by. He picked it up, considering whether he even cared anymore. Then he made a choice. He didn't open the message. He didn't confront her. He didn't tell her he knew. Instead, he placed the phone face down on the counter and smiled. Because this time, Alyssa had handed him the match he needed to burn her entire narrative to the ground. The legal preparation. That evening, Oliver quietly scanned the prenup she had insisted on signing years ago, back when she believed she was marrying a man with no prospects, no drive, no future. The prenup was simple. What each entered the marriage with, they kept. Any new assets acquired individually remained individual property. Joint property would be split 50-50. But income earned individually, protected. Inheritance, protected. Business assets, protected. Alyssa had crafted the document to protect herself, and in doing so, she accidentally protected him. She had expected him to remain mediocre, but Oliver was no longer the man she married. And soon the world and Alyssa would discover exactly who he had become. The moment. Everything snapped. One night, Alyssa came home late again. She smelled of a masculine cologne, sharp, woodsy, unmistakable. Oliver didn't comment. She approached him cautiously. "Oliver, are you happy with us?" He closed his laptop and looked at her. "No." Her breath hitched. Can we fix it?" "No." Tears welled instantly. "You don't mean that." "I do," he said calmly. "I'm done." Alyssa's knees buckled. She collapsed onto the couch, covering her face with shaking hands. "You can't do this," she whispered. "Oh, but I can." What about everything we've built?" He laughed softly. "You built illusions. I built a life." Her tears intensified. "Oliver, please, let's talk. Please." "I'm not interested in talking." She lifted her head, her face blotchy and broken. "What are you interested in?" "Moving on." Her voice cracked. "You can't just leave. I won't let you." "That's the thing," he said, standing. "You don't get a choice." Alyssa felt the ground disappearing beneath her. "What are you going to do?" she whispered. Oliver stepped past her, grabbed his coat, and opened the door. "Something I should have done a long time ago." He walked out. She didn't know yet that he was heading to a lawyer. She didn't know yet that he had evidence. She didn't know yet that the prenup favored him. She didn't know yet that the life she planned to steal from him was built behind fortress walls she could never breach. She didn't know yet that Oliver wasn't afraid of her anymore. But she would. Soon. Very, very soon. Oliver stood in the courthouse hallway, feeling the strange, electric calm of a man who had already won long before anyone else noticed. Alyssa swept past him, her heels cracking against the polished floor like gunshots. She didn't look at him. She didn't dare. Her lawyer, a tired man named Briggs, walked beside her, flipping through papers he clearly no longer believed in. Inside the courtroom, the air was tense with expectation. Alyssa had been smirking for weeks. She thought today would be her coronation, when she would finally take half of everything she believed Oliver owned. She thought she'd walk out a victor, leaving him with scraps. She had no idea she was walking into an ambush she helped build herself. When the judge entered, everyone rose. Oliver didn't look at Alyssa, but he could feel her gaze scanning him, waiting for nerves, panic, fear. Instead, he sat like a man waiting for his flight to be called. The judge cleared her throat and opened a thick folder. "Mrs. Carter," she said in a controlled, icy voice, "we have completed our full financial review. The findings are concerning." Alyssa's smirk twitched. The judge continued. "Your sworn statements do not match your financial activity. Your expense reports show tens of thousands in unreported luxury spending, restaurant bills, and travel. Additionally, we discovered a 5-star suite booked under your name in Montreal, a trip you claimed was for a women's leadership conference." Alyssa's eyes darted toward Briggs. There must be confusion," she stammered. "There is no confusion," the judge snapped. "Your husband's forensic accountant matched the travel dates with cell phone tower data and credit card activity." Murmurs swept through the courtroom. Alyssa's face drained of color. Then the judge dropped the detonator. "As for Mr. Harper," she looked at Oliver, "your financial records are complete, transparent, and consistent. Your holdings are entirely independent of the marital estate." A silence, sharp as a blade. "Your net worth," the judge said, "is estimated at—" She read the number aloud, a number so astonishing that even Briggs's jaw slackened, a number Alyssa had never even imagined. And every eye in the courtroom swung toward her. She looked like she'd been shot. "No," she whispered. "That can't be right. Oliver he can't have—" The judge cut her off. "You were under the impression your husband was significantly less financially capable than he truly is." She paused. "However, the law's clear. These assets were structured before your relationship and remain his separate property." Alyssa's lips trembled. She had come to destroy a man she thought was poor. Instead, she discovered she'd been married to someone far wealthier than her entire social circle combined, and now she wasn't getting a cent of it. "As for your request for spousal support," the judge continued, "it is denied." Alyssa's breath hitched. "And your claim to joint assets is rejected due to evidence of financial misrepresentation and deliberate attempts to conceal spending from the marital account." Oliver didn't move. He didn't need to. The judge had done everything for him. The gavel struck. The case was over. When they stepped into the hall, Alyssa finally snapped. "Oliver, wait." She grabbed his sleeve like a drowning woman reaching for a lifeboat. "You tricked me. You tricked everyone." He turned slowly, calm, almost sympathetic. "No," he said. "You tricked yourself. I just stopped helping you do it." Her voice cracked. "You could have told me you were rich. You could have treated me better even when you thought I wasn't." She blinked rapidly, panic crawling across her face. "Oliver, please, don't walk away from us like this." "What us?" he asked. "You ended that long before the divorce." She shook her head, desperate. "I can change.
I will change. I swear. I didn't mean to hurt you. You know I get insecure, and I say stupid things, but we can fix this. You don't have to throw away everything we had." He studied her for a long, heavy moment. "You threw it away," he said quietly. "The moment you decided you were superior to me. The moment you stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as a stepping stone." Her mascara smeared as tears fell. "You can't just walk away," she whispered. "I already did." He stepped past her, leaving her hand hanging empty in the air. Alyssa turned, stumbling after him. "If you leave now," she said, breathless, "what am I supposed to do?" He paused at the end of the hallway. Not for her sake, for closure. "You'll survive," he said, "but you won't forget." And then he walked out. Outside the courthouse, the news cameras were already waiting. Alyssa had boasted so loudly for months, telling friends, co-workers, even strangers that she'd take him to the cleaners, that her humiliation had become the event of the week. Reporters swarmed. "Mrs. Carter, any comment on the judge's ruling? Is it true you concealed financial information? Did you know your husband was worth millions?" Alyssa froze under the flash of cameras, shell-shocked. Oliver passed through the crowd unnoticed. Exactly how he liked it. 2 weeks later, documents were finalized. Everything Alyssa thought would be hers, half the house, joint savings, equity, was denied. The court found she had acted in bad faith, and she walked away with nothing but her own debts. Her friends stopped calling. Her Instagram, which once showcased designer brunches and beach getaways, went silent.
She applied for jobs she never thought she'd need. And everywhere she went, she heard whispers. That's her. The woman who tried to scam her own husband. The one who didn't know he was loaded. The one who got destroyed in court. Her reputation shattered. But Oliver rebuilt himself. He bought a new condo overlooking the river, simple and quiet. He returned to coding, consulting, and designing new apps, not for money, but for pleasure. His mornings were calm, his nights were peaceful. For the first time in years, he slept without tension. One morning, while stirring his coffee, his phone buzzed. A message from Alyssa. "I'm sorry. For everything. I should have valued you. I see that now." He stared at the message, then deleted it without replying. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was freedom. In the end, it wasn't about destroying Alyssa. It was about finally escaping the version of himself she tried to turn him into. He didn't celebrate, didn't brag, didn't look back. He simply lived. And that, more than anything else, was the victory she never saw coming.